All right, so now we've gotten all our modeling out of the way. We have our set built, our prop built, and our character. We're ready to start rigging these for animation. We're going to come to File, and we're going to open up our Ready for Rigging character scene we got set up here under Characters, Robots, and Final for Rigging, and we'll just open that up. We're going to do this in an iterative manner, meaning we're going to take this step by step so you can understand the concepts. This isn't necessarily how it's going to be done professionally, but I want you to understand some of the base ideas so as we start to add to them, you can understand the foundations. So one of the first foundations that I want to discuss with you is going to be the concept of hierarchies. And I've mentioned this word before. Hierarchies is an important term, and we looked at it with the ball project previously in terms of using groups to change the squash and stretch and to create a custom squash and stretch control with something like set driven keys. But we can use that here as the body as a whole to make it function correctly. We're going to need to think about the functionality we need it to have, first of all, but we can use the hierarchies to kind of set this up. So one of the things we can imagine is that the arms are essentially going to move with the body. So that means if we think of the top of the hierarchy, the very top is going to be our body. And then underneath that is going to be an arm, right? But more specifically, it's going to be something like the shoulder. Then the shoulder is going to control the next portion, which is going to be the forearm or upper arm rather. So that's going to be the upper arm. Then the upper arm is going to control the elbow, and then the elbow is going to control the lower arm, and so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to set that up as a hierarchy. Now, before you do that, just double check that you have frozen transforms on everything. If you need to just do a quick cleanup, you can select that top group, select hierarchy, modify, freeze transforms. Also a reminder, I did move this to be on top of the grid. And you can also clear out the history, delete all by tape history, and just make sure that each of these also has a name, a correct name. Okay, make your life a little bit easier. Now let's start hooking these up. I have this robot group, I have the body, I have the left arm, I have the right arm. The way that you can do this very quickly is by using the hotkey P. P is going to be for parent. And the selection order is going to be the child first. Then you're going to select the parent. Then you're going to hit P. So the little mantra I like to use for it is child parent P. So if you can remember child parent P, you can make this function. So let's take a look at this first off by getting our finger here to work. This is going to be a child of the next object over. So this is a child of that. That is a child of this. This is a child of that. That is a child of this. And lastly, that's a child of the wrist. So you can see how the selection is going to be fairly natural. I'm going to select my child, which is the tip of my finger. I'm going to shift select the joint, and I'm going to hit P to parent. And if we take a look at this now, you'll see what happens in my hierarchy here is this finger joint now controls that tip. Now, we don't need to worry about the pivots because the pivots are going to actually be the spheres in the case of this robot. So you notice this isn't exactly pivoting from the correct location, but that's because I'm selecting the wrong thing. This is just a structure. If I select this, then shift select my next finger joint and hit parent by hitting P, you'll see that this now controls that finger and this now bends. So we can resume this. We can select this finger joint, shift select this finger length, press P, and then conclude by selecting this one, shift selecting that finger joint and pressing P. And what you'll see now is because we've created this elaborate hierarchy here, which I expand out in my outliner, this top joint controls everything down the line from it. Then the various joints here can be used to shape the fingers. And now we have an ability to animate this and have it move as a whole. But we still have an issue, which is if we try and rotate this arm, it doesn't work, or if we move this hand, it doesn't work. So let's set these back to their 0, translate rotates, and we can continue this out. So this here, I would shift select and P to parent to the wrist. Then this wrist, I would select, shift select the lower arm and P. The lower arm I would select, shift select the elbow and P. The elbow here I would select, shift select the upper arm and P. And then lastly, the upper arm, and the shoulder I would select and press P. And at this point, you'll see that we get this functionality where the arm can lift. Maybe I'll lower it first. The elbow can bend, and the wrist can bend. So now you can see that we have the ability to really come in here and start posing this. Now you notice we have a little bit of an issue where our other finger didn't tag along. So I'm just going to highlight all these again, highlight their channels and hit that 0 key. And we can incorporate the final finger. This is going to give us a branching hierarchy. So if we expand out our hierarchy here in our outliner and we find ourselves our wrist, what we'll see is that the wrist will have 2 children. So one of the cool things about hierarchies is you could have sort of a family lineage, if that makes sense. You can have one person having 2 children, no issues with that. And by person, I mean polygon. So let's do this the same way we did before. Remember, it's child parent P, so we're just going to go down the line in terms of selection order till we get to the very end and then hook that back into the wrist, okay? So I'll start with my finger, select the next finger shaft and press P, select the shaft, select the joint, press P, select the joint, select the shaft, press P, select the shaft, select the joint, press P. Then lastly, select the joint, shift select the wrist and press P. And you'll see now what we have is under that left wrist, you'll see the first one, which is the top finger, and the second one, which is the bottom finger. Now, if we go ahead and pose out the arm here, we'll have the ability to shape this. And what's cool is since these are just balls, we can kind of rotate these freely. It makes for a very easy to pose, easy to animate character on our part. And we can see how this is going to be able to create a little clampy arm. So that way our character should be able to grab what he needs to grab, no problem. You'll notice several times I'm grabbing the wrong piece here when I'm posing. We'll talk about how we can set up some controls to make that easier, but you can see there is our character coming together. So really cool. We already have motion on this character. Let's zero these out again. The final step is to tie this into the body, and we actually aren't going to want to do that, but we're going to do it anyway, so I can show you how to undo it and correct it. But you would think, okay, what's the final step? Let's get this to the body here. We're going to take the shoulder, shift select the body, P to parent, and you're going to see the body becomes the parent of the shoulder, and everything is underneath that. So now if I move the body, the arm moves. But here's where the challenge comes in. When I move the body, if I rotate it, the arm is also rotating, which I may not want to have happen if I want the character to be able to look down or over and have the arms not move. So that's something we might have to program into this when we set up our final hierarchy, but that's going to get the base hierarchy set up. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is I want you to try and set up the hierarchy for the first arm, and then I want you to try and set up a hierarchy for the second arm and tie this all together so it is a single hierarchy. All right, so go ahead and try that out, and when we come back, we're going to go through it together, and I'll show you how to get it hooked up. All right, so coming back, let's go ahead and get to it. We already know how this is going to go in terms of selections. It's going to be sort of this cascading effect where we're going to go here to here to here to here to here to here to here. And the thing about rigging is once you understand it and you get used to it, it's very quick. Now, don't go too quick where you mess up, but what we can do here is just select our fingertip, finger shaft, P to parent, finger shaft to finger joint, P to parent, finger joint to shaft, P to parent, shaft to joint, P to parent, joint to wrist, P to parent. And then I'll do the same on the bottom. Tip to shaft P, shaft to joint P, joint to shaft P, shaft to joint P, and then joint to wrist P. And that'll get our wrist set up. And it'll get each of our fingers set up. It's not a bad idea to come in here and just give them a wiggle and then Control Z when you're done. From there, wrist to arm, arm to elbow, elbow to arm, arm to shoulder, shoulder to body. And what you'll see now is the left arm, right arm groups we can basically get rid of because now this is all tidily placed under a single hierarchy here. And we can go ahead and pose our character. So now we have the ability to move this. We can see that we set it up correctly for animation, so it is all good to go. I'm not the biggest fan of how big I made this thing's arms. I think I could have made them a lot smaller. But you can see with just a basic setup like this, if we're creating a robotic character, all we need to think about is how the parts are going to go together. And think about how many things move this way. Basically, if it's not organic, if it's not an animal, it's not a person, it's not a plant, any sort of machinery, you can actually use this to create your rig for. And you could, if you're using this on your own, essentially stop here. You wouldn't need to make any changes. Now, there is one last thing I do want to mention is the head rotating here. What if I want that to rotate freely? So let's take a look at how we can get that in here next. But what I want you to do is finish up your rig first with the basic parent hierarchy setup here. Then let's go ahead and save it out, do a save scene as. Let's go ahead and put this into our rigging directory for the robot. I'm going to create a subfolder in here called rigging. And we'll just create a new folder here called setup. And we'll just go ahead and make this our robot underscore rig underscore 01. Okay, so as a challenge, if you have not done so already, what I want you to do is create the hierarchy for your robot, make it so the arms have the correct functionality in terms of parenting, and then finally tie them into the body there and save it into a new directory in your robot folder for rigs. Let's go ahead and solve the problem of the head next and take a look at how we can incorporate additional hierarchies into our hierarchy to accomplish that. So as a rigger, a lot of what we do is we solve problems, and we've solved a problem here of getting everything to move together while simultaneously giving us these independent movements so we can actually animate and control this. But one of the things we want to add to this rig is the ability for the body to move like a head and rotate around freely, opposed to rotating the whole body. That way, if we want the robot to be able to look around, we can accomplish that. So let's take a look at how we can do that. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set up a hierarchy similar to what we have on the wrist here, but for the body. So with the wrist, what we have is a single object here controlling two others. For the body, we would need one that controls the head and then controls the left arm and the right arm. So how we're going to do that is we're going to utilize groups. So let's start out by expanding out our character here just to see the tops of the hierarchy. And let's go ahead and break apart the rig a little bit here. To unparent something, you can use the hotkey Shift P, and that will unparent. So I'm going to unparent the left shoulder. Then I'm going to come to the right shoulder here and hold Shift P to unparent. And I'll do the same with the body. I'll go ahead and hit Shift P to unparent. We can then double click the body and we can change that to head since the body is going to be the group we're about to create, and we can create that group. Now to do this, what you can do is you can either click into an empty spot on your outliner, or you can click into an empty spot out here in the workspace, and you can create something called a null. Now a null is simply an empty group. And what's unique about that is it allows us to have a set of transforms we can essentially place anywhere, and we can use that as a filler in our rig. We did this with the ball. We didn't exactly use nulls. We just grouped on top of the ball and we got the result. But in this case, we'll use a null. So I'm going to hit Control G, and you'll see in my outliner, we get something called a null. In our view area, you can see we have a transform here, but we have no associated selection with it, and that's because it's empty. Now, we want this null to be in the same position as our body's rotation, which is at the center of this sphere. We can do so using snapping. What we can do here is we can turn on our wire on shaded, which is this icon right here, or you can switch over here to wireframe mode. Either of these will work. You might prefer wireframe so you can actually see through the object, so we'll go ahead and do wireframe. And then holding V, we can snap to the center of this sphere, moving our pivot. So if you press D to enter pivot move point and you hold V to snap to vertex, we can move this to match the vertices here. Now, what I'm going to do is switch to my front view here and wireframe mode. And then holding V, I'll just snap till it's at the middle of the sphere, which I believe is right about here. And then you can hit D and call that good. So that will be the location we need our pivot to be. Now from here, I can rename this group body and we can parent these underneath. There's two ways we can do this. We can either do the child parent P method. So I could, for example, take the head. I could then shift select the body here in the outliner and press P to parent, and that's going to put it under. Or if you're just working the outliner here, since it's a very simple connection, you can also just middle mouse drag with your mouse button there, hover over body and release, and it will add that entire hierarchy. So I'm just going to do that for the left and right shoulder, middle mouse drag, and put that inside of there. Now, I'm going to delete that robot group for now. We might bring it back later. And what we have now is a body here, which can move around. But now the head can move independently because it's been placed inside of here. And now I can have my character look around, while at the same time I can have my character's arms be posed. So now I have a lot of flexibility in what I can do with this character. So you can see how those empty groups can allow us to fill this in and really kind of patch up what is missing in our functionality. So now we can have that character have the freedom to rotate there. Really cool and really helpful for what we're trying to accomplish. All right. Now I'm just going to highlight these and set this all back to 0 here. Like so. Let's get the character back to 0 as well. I'll have to come into the body here and 0 that out. You might want to check and just make sure rotate works. Also scale. It's always good to check all your bases there. It looks like everything's good to go. So now we have the functionality we're missing for our rig. What we're going to do next is we're going to add in additional usability to this. We're going to explore setting up controllers and how that works. So we don't have the same issue we had with our ball project where it was kind of hard to select and we had to work from the outliner. So we're going to build a true rig in that respect. But before we do, let's get this hierarchy in place so we can solve our various problems. We can have something moving and functioning, and we know what we need to create controls for and what we need to attach them to. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is I want you to solve the problem. I want you to utilize a group to create a branching hierarchy where the head, shoulder left, and shoulder right are nested under so that your character can rotate the head but still move as a whole body. All right. So go ahead and give that a shot. And then when you're ready, jump into the next section where we start building a more complete rig.